Time Toastmaster and writer Rick Willett will share the journey he has been on with his one and only novel in a speech entitled The Long Road to Magic. Please welcome Rick Willett.
Do we have the lights brought up to a more normal level? Oh. You don't want to bring them down again. Just kidding. So, when I was 26 years old in 1985, I saw a play called The Normal Heart by Larry Kramer when it opened at the Public Theater in New York City. And I actually saw it 3 times in 2 weeks because I was so overwhelmed by it. Partly because it's a brilliant play, and partly because it was a real wake-up call about AIDS. And I had been living in close proximity to the epidemic for a while, but it was really in the audience of that play that it hit me as a gay man and as a writer. I remember thinking, if I'm going to call myself a writer, I better start writing about this, because I'm living at the epicenter of a medical catastrophe. But I also thought, what could I possibly say about it? Because I felt very cut off from the gay male world in Manhattan at that time. I really felt cut off from the world. I had tried to embrace the life of a happy, promiscuous homosexual, but it was never temperamentally suited me, and I'd gone into kind of shock and retreat from it. But I began to think, wouldn't it be interesting to take a character like me, and what if he became the central caregiver to a friend who was a more typical gay man of Manhattan at that time, who was more comfortable with his sexuality, more promiscuous, but who had AIDS. And what if in that caregiving bond with each other, we saw how that changed both of them. And that was the birth of what became my one and only novel, A Friend of Dorothy's. Now, the title comes from an expression which back in the day, if you wanted to say someone was gay, but you didn't really want to say it, you'd say, I hear he's a friend of Dorothy's. It came from Judy Garland and The Wizard of Oz. So I worked on the novel from 1985 until 1991. And back then, no one talked about self-publishing their book because it was really frowned upon. So I went the conventional route, and I got an agent on the book, and he shopped it around, and we collected some of the nicest rejection letters you'll ever read. They're real pips. I still have all of them. And eventually I did that thing that writers should probably never do, and actually now physically you really can't do it. I put it in a drawer, and I could do that because I had written the first draft on something called a typewriter. I don't know if you kids know what that is. But I had a physical manuscript that I could put in a drawer. That's where I put it. And I began writing plays, and I got some success at that, and then I moved into screenplays. And decades went by. I began to notice a couple of things. First of all, my novel had become a historical document. Because it's hard for me to say this, but I'm one of the last surviving gay men from that time and place, because many gay men from there, of course, died of AIDS, but also those of us who made it through are now older. We're dying of old age. So the novel took on a more historic significance. I also began to notice my lead character, Eric, clever, right? Rick, Eric. Like a lot of first novels, mine is semi-autobiographical. But Eric is he's afraid of sex, he's afraid of people, he's afraid of life. And I began to notice being birthed into this world, at least 2 generations now of young people who, if statistics are to be believed, are not having a lot of sex. They're having trouble connecting with one another. They're living at home with their parents. Now, this is all now because of phones, but my awkward, isolated lead character suddenly became someone that people could identify with, more people could identify with. And I'd always found through the years with the manuscript that women responded to the book. They loved the book. And it's interesting because it's a tearjerker anyway because it's about AIDS, but women cry during the sex scenes. But not all of them, but not all the sex. But they identify with the arc. The arc of the main character is towards finding acceptance of your own unique, quirky sexuality. And I find that women, perhaps especially straight women, really relate to that and respond to that. And in keeping with that, in line with that, there's a long sex scene in the book, which was one of the reasons that editors rejected it back in the day, because they thought it was a bit much. And it was a time when gay male sex was frightening to people. It was spreading AIDS, etc. And so to have a book that sort of celebrated gay male sexuality was just, as I said, a bit too much for people. But I thought, well, now that's changed. You can certainly write about whatever you want to write about. And also the whole atmosphere around self-publication had changed. So it's now a perfectly respectable thing to do. And so I decided that I would publish my novel. And I had made this decision in the theater before I produced my own work. And I really recommend it, because now literally around the world, there are producers who are producing theatrical projects of mine, but it all started because once upon a time I said, I'm not going to sit at home and wait for the phone to ring. I'm going to produce the damn thing myself. And so with the same spirit, I said, I'm going to publish the damn thing myself. I've written a lot of damn things. And thus began a learning curve, which was long, as all learning curves are, longer than I expected it to be. I founded my publishing company, The Magic Show Press, which is called that because when I was a boy, one of the first shows I did for my parents, for my family, was a magic show, as Ryan has talked about today. And so it's The Magic Show Press. And I work in publishing, but there was so much I didn't know about publishing a book. And it's just a mountain of detail that you don't see coming. But after months and months and months of hard work, I'm proud to announce that yesterday was the official publication day of A Friend of Dorothy's. Hardcover, paperback, and wait, there's more. Also ebook. You can buy it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all over the internet. It's also going to be on sale at Book Soup up on Sunset and at Skylight Books across town. You can buy it online in Hungary. If you want, you can fly to Budapest, go online and order my book. They will put you in prison for reading it, but it will be an adventure. We also have gotten a couple of reviews. I say we because inevitably you assemble, you get a team by the time something like this happens. And we got 2 reviews. I'm going to close by reading short excerpts from them. They're both very good reviews. Publishers Weekly said, although A Friend of Dorothy's was completed in 1991 and captures the emotional turmoil of a gay man's sexual awakening during the height of AIDS with nuance and immediacy, playwright Willett's urgent novel doesn't easily fit into genre conventions. And Kirkus Reviews said Willett depicts Dale's illness in unflinching detail, but avoids maudlin sentimentality. He manages the difficult task of making an AIDS story funny. Then, through a skillful accretion of matter-of-fact details, he vividly conveys the pathos of Dale's decline and Eric's fumbling, tender response. Readers will be laughing through their tears. Madam Toastmaster.